Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Bill Marchiony. I'm a spiritual director, a preacher, a teacher, and a healer. Who are you? Now I'd like to ask you, tell me who you are, but because of the size of the group, just answer that question for yourself. Tell me who you are. There are lots of different answers to that question. I'm Bill. I'm a father, a son, and a brother. I had the opportunity to spend 3 or 4 days with both of my brothers and my cousin up at my cousin's house in Vermont, visiting family and climbing mountains and mountain biking and having adventures and telling stories and so forth. And one of the really cool things that happened for me is I got to connect with a little bit of the richness and texture that's the truth of who my family is, even though I wasn't necessarily aware of it or involved in it to begin with. So you guys have probably heard the story about how my mother and her family escaped from Nazi Germany in 1939, right at the last possible moment, and later it turned out that that half of the family had been Jewish. We completely lost touch with them, which of course is how I found out that heredity-wise I'm Jewish, in addition to heredity-wise being Christian, and of course choice-wise being New Thought religious scientist. So when I get into, let me tell you who I am, it's like, I'm not sure we have that much time. But interestingly, my nephew, Ben, was traveling and he decided to go on vacation with a buddy of his to Europe. And my brother encouraged him, because he was going to be in Berlin, go ahead and connect with the family in Berlin. It's like, I don't want to get together with them. And Dave made him understand, no, the holy grail of traveling is when you get to spend time with a family who lives locally. So Ben didn't believe it, being 20. Now he believes it. Complete eye-opening experience, complete warm embrace from this family that we've been disconnected from as long as we have. He's emailing back pictures to all of us. I think 13 different documents and photos about just exactly how awesome this experience is for him as he's connecting with the truth of who he is. Fun part for me, he says, he sends me a message on Facebook saying, Uncle Bill, tell me what your email address is. And Marchiony, it's bill@marchiony.com. Everybody in the family has the same email address. It's your name at marchiony.com. Been that way since before you were born. Tell me who you are. So the conversation we were having with among our brothers, I think this was yesterday. It turns out that our mom, had a poet who she loved, and I was completely oblivious to this, probably because I wasn't into poetry. It was Don Marquis, Archie and Mehetabel, and a whole bunch of other characters. And one of her favorites is a poem called The Moth. And because the talk today is Let Me Be Clear, it really resonated with me, so I'd like to read this to you. It's called The Lesson of the Moth. I was talking to a moth the other evening. He was trying to break into an electric light bulb and fry himself on the wires. Why do you fellows pull this stunt, I asked him. Because it is the conventional thing for moths? Or why, if that had been an uncovered candle instead of an electric light bulb, you would now be a small, unsightly cinder. Have you no sense? Plenty of it, he answered, but at times we get tired of using it. We get bored with the routine and crave beauty and excitement. Fire is beautiful, and we know that if we get too close it will kill us, but what does that matter? It is better to be happy for a moment and be burned up with beauty than to live a long time and be bored all the while. So we wad up all our life into one little roll, and then we shoot the roll. That's what life is for. It's better to be part of beauty for one instant and then cease to exist than to exist forever and never be part of beauty. Our attitude toward life is, come easy, go easy. We're like human beings used to be before they became too civilized to enjoy themselves. And before I could argue him out of his philosophy, he went and immolated himself on a patent cigar lighter. I do not agree with him. Myself, I would rather have half the happiness and twice the longevity. but at the same time, I wish there was something I wanted as badly as he wanted to fry himself. So on the one hand, there's that urging to do something spectacular and grand. And then there's the good sense to not. What a wonderful balance point. A few weeks back, we had movie night. We watched the movie Arrival. If anybody has been planning to see the movie and has not seen the movie, spoiler alert, I'm going to give away part of the ending of the movie. Because the thing that was really amazing for me in the movie Arrival was that you go through the whole movie and you come to understand that all the flashback scenes are flash forward scenes. This stuff hasn't happened yet. The incredible sorrow of losing her child, the incredible sorrow of having her marriage end, all of the joy that came from all of those things. And the part that was so profound for me is that when she learned the language and understood her entire life as a timeline, and she had the choice, she chose the same thing anyway. If you knew what all the ups and downs were going to have been when you made that choice a year or 2 or 30 back, would you make the same choice? Would you follow that same tortured, circuitous path that has brought you to this moment now? That's a heck of a question. I'm Bill. I'm a man in this moment, continuing to take the next step and do the best I can. Tell me who you are. Yeah. The title of the talk today is Let Me Be Clear. And it's all about being able to express what's in our heart, what's in our mind, to be able to communicate that so that it winds up in the heart and the mind of the person who we're communicating with. And it has long been my point that the result of the communication happens in the mind or the awareness of the person being communicated with. I can stand up here and say the most eloquent, wonderful, insightful, brilliant, clever, funny, happy, joyous things. And if you're sitting there in a bad mood, or thinking that I don't know what I'm talking about, it's just wah, 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 wah. Or another experience that I've had, somebody will tell me that I said something that I never said, that was all what they were thinking about at the time that I happened to have been talking, and it doesn't have anything to do with me. So it's not about letting me say the right words. It's let there be light. Let me be clear. Let me express myself in a way that is going to communicate the truth that's inside of me and connect with that truth and that light and that love that's inside of you. When I tell you who I am and I ask who you are, I know that there are fluffy and superficial answers. I know that when I ask somebody how they're doing, and they say, fine, they didn't actually tell me anything, other than, I'm not going to tell you right now, and we're going to agree. Fine is actually an abbreviation, not going to get into that right now. You can ask me about it later if you want to. But that question is always about, and for me it's that invitation is, what's the truth about you? What's that important, wonderful thing about you? What is it that lights you up, that drives you, that inspires you, that would make you give away everything to let that truth of who you are shine? Mike's here today. He's been running a regional men's group in Moorestown for, 40, 50 years. No, maybe not that long. And as often as not, at the beginning of the men's group, there's a reading. It's the same reading. And it is an absolutely brilliant and beautiful reading. And it's talking about just exactly this. So I'm going to share it with you today. It's by Uriah Mountain Dreamer. It's called The Invitation. It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for, and if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing. Is this sounding familiar? It doesn't interest me how old you are. I want to know if you'll risk looking like a fool for love, for your dream, for the adventure of being alive. It doesn't interest me what planets are squaring your moon. I want to know if you've touched the center of your own sorrow, if you've been opened by life's betrayals, or have become shriveled and closed from fear of further pain. What she's saying is, tell me who you are. I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without moving to hide it or fade it or fix it. I want to know if you can be with joy, mine or your own, if you can dance with wildness and let the ecstasy fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes without cautioning us to be careful, to be realistic, to remember the limitations of being human. I want to know who you are. I love this one. It doesn't interest me if the story you're telling me is true. I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself, if you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul, if you can be faithless and therefore trustworthy. I want to know if you can see beauty even when it's not pretty every day, and if you can source your own life from its presence. Man, it'd be nice if this were happier. But when we get down into the truth of who we are, what it is that we're really yearning for, what it is that we want to share, when we get into that space, this is who I am, this is what I came here to be. That's what Edwin is talking about. What's our life's purpose? What is it that we're here to share? It's not always neat and pretty. It's not always dressed up with a bow. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it requires that persistence and that fortitude. Sometimes it's like the movie Contact. There's some good and some bad together, and you, even when you know going in that it's not going to be an easy ride, to go for the ride anyway. I want to know if you can live with failure, yours and mine, and still stand at the edge of the lake and shout to the sliver of the full moon, yes. It doesn't interest me to know where you live or how much money you have. I want to know if you can get up after a night of grief and despair, weary and bruised to the bone, and do what needs to be done to feed the children. It'd be nice if all this, high and lofty, I'm going to be spiritual and sit on my purple pillow and tell people wonderful aphorisms and it's all going to be wonderful. And sometimes it gets gritty. The Buddhists have a saying, before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. So you guys know Nick Annis, he was helping me in my yard. I had an old rotten fence, and he took the fence out and put in new fence panels. So I have this stacks of fence, and I found myself chopping them into firewood. I'm thinking, am I the Buddha? Or am I a guy in a suburban backyard chopping up a fence? Because the enlightenment doesn't come from the chopping wood or the carrying water. The enlightenment comes from the enlightenment. The enlightenment doesn't come from what we do. It comes from who we are. It doesn't interest me to know. It doesn't interest me who you know or how you came to be here. I want to know if you will stand in the center of the fire with me and not shrink back. It doesn't interest me where or what or with whom you have studied. I want to know what sustains you from the inside when all else falls away. I want to know if you can be alone with yourself and if you truly like the company you keep in the empty moments. I'm Bill Marchiony, a divine and perfect light of God's love. Sometimes struggling, sometimes working, sometimes not seeing it, but doing the best I can. Tell me who you are. I'll give you a hint. You are a bright light of God's love, shining in a way that is unique and wonderful and joyous, even when it's not obvious to you or the people around you. You are a blessing. So it is.